The iron gate stood cold beneath Emma Hartley's trembling hand. Behind her, 2 miles of snow-covered road stretched back toward Stillwater, a town that had made its judgment clear. 3 days ago, the landlady's voice still echoed. No one wants a fat girl taking up space in my boarding house. Find somewhere else. Emma had tried everywhere else. Now only this remained. She lifted her carpet bag, its weight somehow heavier than when she'd left town. The Thornhill Ranch spread before her, vast and white under the December sky. Smoke curled from a distant stone chimney. Lamplight already glowed in windows, though sunset was an hour away. Warmth. The kind she'd been denied for longer than she cared to count. Her fingers found the gate latch. It didn't budge, frozen solid. You lost, ma'am. Emma spun. A ranch hand stood 20 feet away, his coat dusted with snow, eyes narrowed with suspicion. Her voice came out smaller than intended. I heard you have a calf in trouble. I can nurse animals. I've done it before. Ranch ain't a refuge for strays. His tone wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. I don't need charity, sir. I need work. He studied her for a long moment. Whatever he saw must have been enough, because he nodded toward the barn. Follow me. Stay close, storm's coming in hard. They walked in silence through deepening snow. Emma's boots weren't made for this weather, and cold seeped through the worn leather. But she kept pace, clutching her bag against her chest. The barn doors swung open. Lantern light spilled across straw and shadows. In the corner, wrapped in blankets, lay a tiny calf. Its sides heaved with labored breathing. Its eyes, when they found Emma, held the dull glaze of a creature giving up. Emma's fear dissolved. She set down her bag and knelt, hands already moving with professional certainty. How long has she been like this? She felt along the calf's neck. Checking temperature. Born yesterday. Mother died. We figured the baby would follow. Not if we don't let her. Emma looked up. I'll need warm milk, clean cloths, and a place to sleep nearby. This one needs feeding every 2 hours. The ranch hand disappeared. Emma removed her threadbare coat and wrapped it around the calf, then pulled the animal close. Body heat first, everything else could follow. She whispered into the soft ear. You and me both, little one. Nobody wanted us today, but we're still here. Through the barn slats, the ranch house glowed like a promise she didn't dare believe in. The barn smelled of hay, leather, and animal warmth better than any room Emma had occupied in months. She worked by lantern light, her hands steady despite exhaustion. The calf's temperature was too low, its breathing shallow but not yet critical. Premature birth, she guessed, maybe a week early. Combined with cold exposure and no mother, the odds were grim. But Emma had learned long ago that grim wasn't the same as hopeless. She mixed warm milk with a beaten egg, testing the temperature against her wrist. Too hot would burn. Too cold wouldn't help, when it felt right. She soaked a clean cloth and held it to the calf's mouth. The animal's tongue moved weakly, then stronger, then it began to suck. That's it, Emma murmured. That's my girl. Most folks would have given up by now. Emma's hand jerked, nearly spilling the milk. A man stood in the doorway, tall, weathered, early 40s. His coat hung open despite the cold, and his eyes held the careful neutrality of someone who'd learned not to hope too quickly. Mr. Thornhill. Emma tried to stand, but he waved her down. Keep working. I'm just watching. He moved closer, lamplight catching the silver threading his dark hair. Hand said you offered to help. I've nursed premature calves before, and orphaned foals, even a few piglets. She returned her attention to the calf, easier than meeting his gaze. This one's strong enough to want to live. That counts for something. Thornhill crouched beside her. His presence was solid, unhurried. What does she need? Constant warmth. feeding every 2 hours around the clock for the first 3 days. After that, every 3 hours for a week. Emma kept her voice level, professional, and someone who won't give up on her. And that someone being you, if you'll allow it, sir. He was quiet for so long Emma thought she'd overstepped. Then he stood. Tack room's through that door. There's a cot and a stove. You can stay there tonight. We'll see about tomorrow. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. This one won't make it, he said quietly, almost to himself. Emma looked up then, meeting his eyes directly. Not if we decide that before we try. Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile, but close. He nodded once and left. Emma arranged the blankets around the calf, then settled into the straw beside it. Through the barn slats, the ranch house windows glowed gold against the blue evening. She could see a figure moving inside Thornhill, probably, sitting down to a solitary dinner. For the first time in weeks, Emma felt almost useful. The calf's breathing steadied beneath her hand. Dawn found Emma already awake. She'd barely slept every 2 hours. She'd risen to warm more milk, to check the calf's temperature, to whisper encouragement into the darkness. Now morning light filtered through gaps in the barn walls, turning dust motes into floating gold. The calf lifted its head when Emma approached, a small movement, but more than yesterday. Good morning, sweetheart. Emma prepared the feeding with practiced efficiency. Look at you, getting stronger. The barn door opened. Thornhill entered carrying a tray coffee, biscuits, eggs. He set it on a hay bale near Emma without comment. Thank you. She accepted the coffee gratefully. You didn't have to. You've been up all night with my calf. Least I can do is make sure you eat. He lingered, watching her coax the animal to take more milk. His silence wasn't uncomfortable, just observant. Finally he spoke. You said you've done this before. Where? My father had a farm in Nebraska, small place. Emma kept her eyes on the calf. I helped with difficult births, sick animals. Seemed to have a knack for it. What happened to the farm? Father died. Farm went to his brother. Uncle didn't see much use for a woman who... She gestured vaguely at herself. Well, who looked like me. Thornhill's jaw tightened. Man's a fool. Emma had no response to that. She'd heard pity before, plenty of times. But the quiet anger in Thornhill's voice was something different. The next 3 days fell into rhythm. Emma rarely left the barn except to fetch water or use the necessary. Thornhill brought meals simple but warm, always more than she could finish. Ranch hands came and went, their voices carrying across the yard. Boss is soft, letting her stay. Won't last once Christmas passes. He's just being Christian about it. Emma pretended not to hear. She focused on the calf, who grew stronger with each passing day. By the third morning, the little creature stood on shaky legs, bleating for breakfast. There you are, Emma laughed, tears pricking her eyes. There's my fighter. Thornhill appeared at dusk on the third day, December 23rd, Christmas Eve tomorrow. You don't sleep much, he observed, leaning against the stall door. Neither does worry, sir. He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, erasing years of loneliness. Suppose you'll want to head to town tomorrow for Christmas services. Emma's hand stilled on the calf's back. Town, where the landlady had turned her out. Where shopkeepers looked through her like she wasn't there. Where children pointed and their mothers pulled them close, as if being fat were contagious. Her silence answered for her. Thornhill studied her with those careful eyes. Something shifted in his expression, a decision being made. Well then, reckon you'll be here for Christmas. He left before she could respond. Emma returned to brushing the calf, but her hands trembled. She told herself it was just exhaustion, but deep in her chest, something dangerously close to hope had begun to bloom. Daniel Thornhill stood at his kitchen window. watching Emma cross the yard through morning mist. She moved with purpose despite obvious exhaustion, carrying the calf's breakfast. Even from here, he could see her lips moving, talking to the animal. Probably, she did that constantly, her voice a low murmur of encouragement and affection. It had been 5 years since this house heard a woman's voice. 5 years since Sarah died with their daughter in her arms, both gone before the midwife could even arrive. 5 years of silence so profound it had become its own presence, sitting across from him at meals, sleeping in the empty bed upstairs. He'd thought he preferred it that way. Simpler. Safer. Then Emma Hartley appeared at his gate with her worn carpetbag and desperate eyes, asking only for a chance to be useful. And somehow, in 3 days, she'd reminded him what life sounded like when someone cared about something other than mere survival. The proper thing would be inviting her to Christmas dinner. But what would that mean? What would people say? The ranch hands already gossiped. If word reached town, Daniel turned from the window, jaw set. Since when did he care about town gossip? He grabbed his coat and headed for the barn. Emma was singing when he entered an old hymn, her voice surprisingly lovely. She sat in the straw, the calf dozing in her lap, and she sang like someone who'd forgotten anyone might hear. Daniel stopped in the doorway, unwilling to break the moment. Then she glanced up and saw him. The song died. Pink flooded her cheeks. I didn't mean to disturb you, he said quickly. That was nice. My mother used to sing that one. Emma gently moved the calf aside and stood, brushing straw from her skirt. Did you need something? Mr. Thornhill. He'd rehearsed this in the kitchen. Now the words tangled on his tongue. It's Christmas Eve. I thought, if you'd be willing, maybe you'd join me for dinner tomorrow. At the house. Her eyes went wide. I couldn't impose. You're not imposing. I'm asking. He shifted his weight, feeling foolish. Been a long time since I had company for Christmas. Seems wrong. You being out here alone when there's a warm table inside. Emma's hands twisted together. Fear, hope, and disbelief chased across her face in quick succession. Why? The word came out barely above a whisper. Why? It was a fair question. Because watching you care for that calf reminded me what tenderness looks like. Because your laugh when the baby stood up was the first genuine joy I've heard in years. Because you deserve better than eating alone in a cold barn on Christmas Day. But he couldn't say any of that. Not yet. Because it's Christmas, he said finally. And because that calf's not the only one who needed somewhere warm to be. Her eyes filled. She looked away quickly, nodding. 4 o'clock tomorrow, then. He turned to leave, then paused. There's a trunk in the guest room. My sister left some things last time she visited. You're welcome to anything that fits. He left before she could thank him. Before he could see if those were tears of gratitude or something else entirely. The bundle he'd wrapped sat on the kitchen table, a simple dress. Dark green. Nothing fancy. He'd remembered Sarah wearing it once, years ago. She'd been taller than Emma, but the seamstress had taken it in when he'd asked. He hadn't planned to ask. But this morning, watching Emma in her worn, stained clothes, something in him had decided. Tomorrow was Christmas. Nobody should feel ashamed on Christmas. Emma descended the stairs at 3:55, her heart hammering against her ribs. The dress fit. When she'd found it in the guest room, wrapped in brown paper with no note, she'd cried. Not from gratitude, though she felt that, but from the crushing weight of being seen, truly seen for the first time in so long. The fabric was soft wool, dark green like pine trees, with a simple cut that didn't try to hide her figure or emphasize it. It just fit, like whoever altered it had done so with respect, not pity. She'd washed, pinned up her hair, and stood before the small mirror. The woman looking back wasn't beautiful, but she wasn't invisible either. Thornhill waited at the bottom of the stairs. When he saw her, something passed across his face. Recognition. Maybe. Or appreciation. Not pity. Never pity. You look. He cleared his throat. That color suits you. Thank you for the dress. And for... She gestured vaguely at everything. All of this. Come on. Dinner's getting cold. The dining room glowed with lamplight and fire. The table was set simply but beautifully good china, a centerpiece of pine boughs, 2 places across from each other. Not at opposite ends like strangers, but close enough for conversation. Emma sat carefully, aware of every movement. How long since she'd eaten at a proper table? Thornhill served roasted chicken, potatoes, carrots glazed with honey. Everything was warm, seasoned well, clearly made with care. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The only sounds the pop of fire and the clink of silverware. Tell me about your father's farm, Thornhill said finally. You mentioned you helped with animals. Emma relaxed slightly. This was safe territory. We had dairy cows mostly, a few pigs. Father let me manage the barn when animals got sick. I read every veterinary book I could find in town. That why you're so good with the calf, I suppose, and because... She hesitated. Animals don't care what you look like. They just care if you're gentle and you show up. Thornhill set down his fork. People should work the same way. But they don't. No. His eyes held hers. They don't. But that's their failing. Not yours. Emma's throat tightened. She looked down at her plate. Do you believe people can change, start over? I believe Christmas happened because everybody deserves another chance. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither quite dared examine. After dinner, they walked to the barn to check the calf. The animal scrambled up at their approach, bleating enthusiastically. Emma laughed and prepared a bottle, her movements easy in Thornhill's presence now. He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. You've given her a chance. That's worth something. She gave me one too. In the lamplight. His hand brushed hers on the bottle. Neither pulled away immediately. The calf nursed, oblivious to the charged silence. Finally, Thornhill stepped back. I should let you rest. Early start tomorrow. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice, at the barn door. He paused. Emma, I'm glad you came to my gate. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the calf and a heart too full of dangerous hope. The gossip reached Stillwater by noon the day after Christmas. Buck, the ranch hand who'd first found Emma at the gate, mentioned it while picking up supplies at the general store. Just a casual comment. Boss had a woman at his table Christmas night. Mrs. Blackwood, the store owner's wife, perked up immediately. Oh, who might that be? That heavy girl from the boarding house. One who got turned out. Silence rippled through the store. What's Daniel Thornhill thinking? Someone whispered. Charity's one thing, but Christmas dinner at his table. Poor man, too kind for his own good. She'll trap him if she can. By afternoon, everyone knew. By evening, Emma heard about it. Thornhill had sent her to town for lamp oil and thread. She'd been nervous but determined she couldn't hide on the ranch forever. The dress gave her courage. Maybe things would be different now. They weren't. Emma stood at the counter, coins in hand, while Mrs. Blackwood deliberately helped every other customer first. Finally, with exaggerated patience, the woman took Emma's money. Behind Emma, 2 voices rose just loud enough to carry, throwing herself at him. Probably. Right there in his barn. Poor Mr. Thornhill, too good-hearted to send her away. Mark my words, she'll trap him into something. Emma's hands trembled. She took her purchases and left. The women's laughter following her into the street. The ride back to the ranch blurred. Tears came halfway, and she let them fall. By the time she reached the barn, Her chest ached with humiliation. She began packing her carpet bag immediately. The calf was strong now, almost ready to join the other animals. Her job was finished. Time to move on before she caused more trouble for a man who'd shown her nothing but kindness. What happened? Emma spun. Thornhill stood in the doorway, face tight with concern. I should go. Her voice cracked. The calf's well enough now. You don't need me anymore. He crossed the space between them in 3 strides. What did they say on the truth? Emma couldn't meet his eyes. That I don't belong here. That I'm... What exactly did they say? Emma. The steel in his voice made her look up. His eyes burned with barely controlled anger, not at her. She realized. For her. They said I was trying to trap you, that you were too kind to send me away. The words tumbled out. I'm causing you problems. People talk. Your reputation. My reputation. Thornhill's jaw clenched. You're worried about my reputation. You've been nothing but good to me. I won't repay that by making your life harder. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was controlled but intense. I asked you to stay through New Year's. I don't go back on my word. But those people don't know you. They don't know what you did for that calf or how hard you've worked. They see what they want to see. He gestured at her bag. You running away won't change that. It'll just prove them right that you were only here for what you could get. Emma stared at him. And if I stay, then you stay because I asked. Because I want you here. And to hell with what anyone else thinks. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was something a refusal to let shame win. A quiet rebellion against small-minded cruelty. Emma slowly unpacked her bag. The days between Christmas and New Year's stretched long and strange. An uneasy peace settled over the ranch. Emma tended the now thriving calf and helped with other animals. Thornhill worked the land, but found reasons to stop by the barn to check supplies, to bring coffee, to ask her opinion on a horse's injury. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. One evening, he taught her to mend tack, his hands guiding hers on the leather punch. Another night, she shared her knowledge of healing herbs, and he listened, like every word mattered. I thought if I stayed invisible, I'd be safe, Emma said quietly one night. They sat by the barn stove, snow falling outside. But invisible just meant alone. Thornhill stared into the fire. I built walls after Sarah died. Easier than risking that kind of pain again. He glanced at her. You've been quietly dismantling them. Emma's breath caught. I didn't mean to. I know. That's what scares me. The honesty hung between them, raw and vulnerable, but fear remained. What happened after New Year's? The unspoken question haunted every conversation, every shared glance. On New Year's Eve, Thornhill appeared at the barn just after sunset. Town's having a gathering tomorrow. New Year's Day celebration. He spoke carefully, not quite meeting her eyes. I'm going. First time in 5 years, Emma's hands stilled on the brush she'd been using on the calf. I'd like you to come with me. The words dropped like stones into still water. Emma understood immediately what he was asking. Not just attendance at a party, but a public statement. An acknowledgement that she mattered to him. That town gossip wouldn't dictate his choices. It was terrifying. They'll talk, she whispered. They already do. It'll be worse after... Maybe. He finally looked at her directly. But I'm tired of living my life based on what other people think. Aren't you... Emma thought of the landlady's cruelty, the whispers in the store, years of being dismissed, overlooked, judged before she could speak. And she thought of Thornhill's kindness, the dress, Christmas dinner, his steady presence and quiet respect. Yes, she said, I'm tired of it. Like, so will you come? Every instinct screamed to refuse. To stay safe in the barn where no one could hurt her. but safety had kept her alone for so long. Let me think on it. He nodded and left. Emma sat with the calf, stroking its soft coat. What do I do, sweetheart? The animal nuzzled her hand, content and trusting. Sometimes, Emma realized, courage meant letting someone else stand with you instead of always standing alone. Emma stared at her reflection, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The green dress again, hair pinned carefully, hands shaking despite her best efforts, through the window. She could see Thornhill hitching the wagon. He moved with quiet determination, a man who'd made his choice and wouldn't be swayed from it. Could she match his courage? Town lay 5 miles away, 5 miles that felt like 50. Every instinct screamed to hide, to stay safe in the barn with the animals who didn't judge. But then she remembered his words. You've been quietly dismantling them. She'd already changed his life. Maybe it was time to let him change hers. Emma descended the stairs. Thornhill helped her into the wagon without comment, but his hand lingered on hers a moment longer than necessary. They rode in silence, the only sounds the horses' hooves and the creak of wheels. Stillwater's community hall glowed with lamplight and voices. Music spilled into the street. Through the windows, Emma could see people dancing, laughing, celebrating. We don't have to go in, Thornhill said quietly. Emma looked at him, this man who'd offered her work when everyone else offered judgment, who'd invited her to Christmas dinner, who was willing to face down a whole town's disapproval just to stand beside her. Yes, she said. We do. They entered together. The effect was immediate. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Whispers spread like ripples across water. Emma's courage nearly failed. Her grip on Thornhill's arm tightened. He patted her hand. I'm right here. Mrs. Blackwood approached, false sweetness dripping from every word. Mr. Thornhill, we didn't expect... Company? Mrs. Blackwood? His voice was pleasant but firm. May I introduce Miss Emma Hartley? She's been invaluable to the ranch, saved my best calf's life through Christmas week. How charitable of you to give her work. The implication was clear. Charity had nothing to do with it. Thornhill's eyes swept the room, making sure everyone heard. Miss Hartley has more skill with animals than any veterinarian I've met, and more integrity than most people I know. Silence followed. Some faces showed shame. Others, grudging respect. A few remained hard with judgment. But then something unexpected happened. Old Sam Fletcher, a neighboring rancher, stepped forward. Daniel's right. I've heard about that calf. My foreman said it was near dead, if Miss Hartley brought it back. That's genuine skill. His wife nodded. Would you share your knowledge? Dear, we've been having trouble with our spring calves. Slowly, carefully, the ice began to crack. Not everyone softened. Mrs. Blackwood remained coldly polite, and several families kept their distance. But enough people extended genuine kindness that Emma could breathe again. Thornhill never left her side. When someone made a cutting remark just loud enough to hear, he responded calmly. Miss Hartley saved my calf through dedicated, skilled care. I'd say that makes her worth 10 of anyone measuring people by less important things. The man who'd spoken had the grace to look ashamed. As evening wore on, Emma relaxed by degrees. She wouldn't say it was comfortable, too many stares, too many whispers, but it wasn't the nightmare she'd expected either. Later, outside under cold stars, Thornhill walked her to the wagon. You didn't have to do that, Emma said softly. Defend me like that. Yes, I did, for you. He paused. And for me. Emma looked up at him. In the moonlight, his face was all plains and shadows, but his eyes were gentle. Why me, Daniel? She used his name for the first time. Out of everyone, why choose me? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because when you look at that calf, you see something worth saving. And when I look at you, I see the same thing. Emma's eyes filled. I'm not. You are. He cupped her face gently. You're brave and skilled and kind. You sing to frightened animals and work through the night to save them. You're everything I didn't know I needed. Daniel, I know it's soon. I know people will talk. But Emma, I'm asking anyway. His thumb brushed her cheek. Stay. Not just through New Year's. Just stay. It wasn't a flowery proposal. There was no ring, no grand gesture. Just a rancher asking a woman to build a life with him, honest and plain. Emma thought of the barn, the calf, the Christmas dinner. She thought of his steady presence and quiet respect. And she thought of how, for the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen worth. Yes, she whispered. He smiled that rare, transforming smile that erased years of loneliness. Then he kissed her, soft and careful, under a sky full of stars. They rode home in comfortable silence, hands clasped between them. Late January, sunlight streamed through the ranch house windows, warm despite the lingering snow. Emma woke in what was becoming her room, not the guest space anymore, but a place that held her things, her presence, her future. Through the window, she could see Daniel in the yard, the once sickly calf frolicking beside him like a puppy. Her calf. Their calf. The little creature who'd given them both a reason to hope. Emma dressed and descended to the kitchen. The coffee was already made Daniel's doing. She smiled and began preparing breakfast, moving through the space like she'd always been there. Because now, she had been 3 weeks since New Year's. 3 weeks of cautious joy, of learning each other's rhythms, of building something neither quite dared name yet but both recognized as real. Daniel entered, stomping snow from his boots. His eyes found hers immediately, the way they always did now. Morning? Morning. How's our girl? Growing like a weed. Thinks she's a dog. He poured coffee. Been meaning to talk to you about spring. Emma set down the spatula. Oh. Need to mend the south fence. Thought we'd plant a kitchen garden, too. You mentioned knowing herbs. He was deliberately casual, but his eyes held intensity. Figure that'll keep us busy through April. Us. Such a small word. Such enormous meaning. I'd like that, Emma said softly. They ate breakfast together, discussing plans practical. Simple. Ordinary plans that meant everything because they assumed a future. Shared space. Combined effort. Over coffee. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. Circuit preacher comes through in March. He spoke carefully. Was thinking, if you're willing, maybe we could ask him to stay a day or two? Emma's heart stuttered. Daniel, I know it's fast. I know people will say things. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But I don't want to wait anymore. I've spent 5 years alone. Now I wake up and hear you singing in the kitchen, and I can't imagine going back. You're sure? Emma searched his face. About me. Despite everything people say. I'm sure about us. The rest is just noise. Emma thought of all the places she'd been turned away. All the voices that said she wasn't enough. Would never be enough. And she thought of this man who'd looked past surface judgments to see her heart. Then yes, she whispered. Yes. His smile could have lit the whole territory. They walked to the barn together after breakfast. The calf ran to Emma immediately, butting her hand for attention. Emma laughed, the sound echoing in the morning air, pure and unguarded. Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Together they watched the calf play, watched the sun climb higher, watched the snow begin its slow melt toward spring. Never thought I'd get here again, Daniel said quietly. After Sarah. Thought that door closed forever. Maybe it did. Emma leaned into his warmth. Maybe this is a different door. He kissed the top of her head. Better one. I think... Emma caught her reflection in the barn window herself beside Daniel, the calf at their feet. The ranch spreading around them in the clear morning light, not invisible anymore, not alone, just seen, just valued, just home. Home ain't a place, her father used to say. It's the folks you can be yourself with. Emma finally understood. The calf bleated, demanding breakfast. Emma prepared a bottle while Daniel fetched fresh hay. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from knowing someone completely and being known in return. Outside, the sky stretched blue and endless, full of promise. Inside the barn, two people who'd thought they'd lost their chances at happiness discovered they'd been wrong. And between them, a rescued calf no longer orphaned. No longer weak stood as living proof that sometimes salvation works both ways. Sometimes the one who needs rescuing ends up saving someone else. Sometimes love arrives not in grand gestures but in quiet moments. A dress left on a bed, a seat at a table, a hand that refuses to let go when the world says you're not worth holding on to. Daniel's fingers found Emma's. She squeezed back. Through the barn door. Morning light painted everything gold.